I dragged my suitcase through the front door, already picturing Amanda's surprised face when she saw me home 2 days early from Dallas. The business trip had been exhausting, but I'd pushed through meetings just to catch an earlier flight. Our bedroom door was slightly open, and I could hear shuffling inside. Maybe she was folding laundry or reorganizing her closet like she did when stressed. I pushed the door wider, ready to drop my bags and pull her into a hug. Then I froze. Her boss, Victor, was sprawled across my side of the bed. He wore my ratty plaid robe, the one with the coffee stain on the sleeve that I'd owned since college. His fingers scrolled casually across his phone screen, completely at ease, like he owned the place. But what really knocked the air from my lungs were the framed photos on my nightstand. 2 kids I'd never seen before grinned back at me with gap-toothed smiles and bright eyes. "What the hell are you doing here?" My voice cracked halfway through the question, sounding weak even to my own ears. Victor's head snapped up, eyes wide. The phone slipped from his hand onto the bedspread. He scrambled upright, tying the robe tighter around his waist, but that somehow made it worse. That was my robe. Those were my pillows he'd been lying against. Before either of us could say another word, I noticed something on the photo he'd knocked to the floor. The little girl in the picture had a birthmark on her left cheek, shaped like a crescent moon. Amanda's sister had that exact same mark. Victor's face went pale as printer paper. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "Hey man, this isn't what it looks like." But his eyes kept darting toward the hallway, where I could now hear footsteps approaching. The clicking of heels on hardwood that I knew belonged to my wife. Amanda appeared in the doorway, coffee mug in hand. Her eyes went wide when she saw me standing there. The mug slipped from her fingers, shattering against the carpet. Hot coffee spread across the beige fibers in a dark stain that would probably never come out. "How long?" I demanded, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "How long has this been going on?" She started stammering something about stress relief and needing support while I was traveling, but Victor cut her off. "It's a one-time thing," he said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes when he said it. I picked up the photo from the floor, my hands shaking. The boy in it looked about 5 years old, maybe 6. The timeline didn't add up. We'd been married since 2019. If that kid was really 5, then the math screamed lies in my face. Amanda moved toward me, tears already forming in her eyes. "Please, just calm down and let me explain." But her tears felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced this scene in her head before, like she'd known this moment would come eventually. I couldn't stay in that room anymore. The air felt too thick, too full of betrayal. I stormed past her into the living room, my mind racing through every late night she'd claimed to be at the office, every business trip Victor had supposedly needed her on, every time she'd been too tired to talk about her day. That's when I spotted her purse on the couch, contents spilled everywhere. Lipstick, keys, receipts, and a crumpled envelope that caught my eye. The label read, "Alimony Payment, June 2024, in neat handwriting. My heart stopped. Alimony? She'd never mentioned being married before. I snatched up the envelope while they whispered frantically in the bedroom behind me. Inside was a bank statement showing monthly transfers of $1,200 to Victor, dating back to 2019, our wedding year. The year she'd told me she was finally ready to settle down after being single for years. I marched back to the bedroom, waving the paper like a battle flag. "Alimony? You want to explain this?" Amanda's face crumpled. "It's old debt from a brief marriage before you, an ex who needed help getting back on his feet." But Victor shifted uncomfortably against the headboard, muttering something about privacy and how this was between them. The kids' photos still sat there on my nightstand, mocking me with their innocent smiles. Why would she have photos of his kids in our bedroom? My quirk kicked in, the one where I ramble when I'm nervous or angry. I always knew those late nights at the office smelled fishy, like when you'd come home reeking of cologne that wasn't mine, or with restaurant receipts from places we'd never been together. Bad takeout excuses, all of them. I kept digging through her purse, my fingers brushing against something hidden in an inner pocket. A keychain with an address tag dangled from my hand. 742 Elm Street, Chicago. We lived in Boston. She'd never mentioned property in Chicago, never talked about having any reason to go there beyond the occasional work conference. Amanda lunged forward, trying to grab the keychain from me. "That's private property information from work. Victor asked me to hold on to it." "Then why's it hidden in your purse?" I shot back. They both went quiet after that. Victor gathered his clothes from my closet, actual clothes he'd apparently been storing in my house, and left without another word. Amanda tried to follow him, but I blocked the doorway. "We're not done talking," I said. She claimed exhaustion, said we'd discuss everything in the morning when heads were clearer. But I knew that was code for giving her time to build a better story. I let her go to bed while I sat in the living room, staring at that address tag until the numbers blurred. Sleep wasn't happening. Around 2 a.m, I grabbed my keys and drove to Chicago. The address led me to a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind with swing sets in yards and basketball hoops over garage doors. Number 742 was a 2-story house with yellow siding and white shutters. I parked across the street, feeling like some creep stalking strangers. But I had to know. Through the front window, I could see toys scattered across the living room floor. A family portrait hung on the wall, and even from the car, I recognized the faces. Amanda, Victor, and those 2 kids from the photos, all dressed in matching blue shirts at what looked like a beach vacation. My chest tightened until I thought my ribs might crack. This wasn't some affair. This was a whole separate life she'd built while pretending to build one with me. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and took pictures of everything. The house number, the cars in the driveway, the portrait through the window. Evidence. I'd need evidence if this went where I thought it was going. Back in my car, I scrolled through the photos, my brain trying to make sense of what I was seeing. That's when I noticed the calendar hanging in their kitchen, visible through a side window. Someone had circled a date in red marker. Our anniversary, July 10th, 2017. I did the math in my head 3 times, hoping I'd gotten it wrong. But no, July 2017 was a full year before I'd even met Amanda. Memories flooded back as I drove home in the early morning darkness. I'd met her at a Boston coffee shop in March 2018. She'd been rushing to a meeting and bumped into my table, spilling latte all over my laptop. I'd been furious for about 30 seconds, until she looked up at me with those apologetic eyes and that charming smile. She'd insisted on paying for the repairs and gave me her number so we could meet for coffee when she wasn't destroying people's electronics. Our first real date had been that weekend. She'd told me she was a marketing executive who'd just gotten out of a messy divorce and was ready to start fresh. We'd connected fast, maybe too fast in hindsight. She said she appreciated my stability, my grounded nature after years with someone chaotic. We got married in June 2019, a small ceremony with close friends and family. Our son Theo was born in 2021, and I'd thought we were building the life she'd always wanted, the life she'd told me she'd never had with her ex. But now that divorce felt like another lie in a growing pile of them. I pulled into our driveway as the sun started rising. Inside, I headed straight for the attic, remembering a box I'd seen up there once when retrieving Christmas decorations. Amanda had snapped at me not to touch it, saying it was just old paperwork from before we met. The shoebox sat in the corner, covered in dust, labeled Past Life in her handwriting. I tore it open, and letters spilled across the attic floor. Love letters. Dozens of them, all addressed to Victor and signed with hearts. The dates ranged from 2015 to 2017, getting more intense as time went on. One from August 2017 made my stomach turn. Victor, I know the divorce papers are ready, but I can't sign them yet. I need to make sure we have stability first. This new guy the first met seems solid, dependable. Give me time to set things up properly. Stability. She'd used me for stability while keeping Victor on the side. Or maybe I had it backwards. Maybe Victor was the main relationship, and I was just the financial backup plan. Another letter from early 2018 mentioned, Our little secret growing. I counted months forward. Their daughter in the photos would have been born around that time if Amanda had been pregnant when she wrote that, but she'd sworn she was done having kids when we met. Said her ex hadn't wanted any and she'd made peace with being child-free before meeting me. More lies. Everything was lies. I pocketed one of the letters as evidence and headed downstairs. I needed coffee. Needed to think clearly. At work later that morning, my old pal Harold noticed me staring blankly at my computer screen during a meeting. You all right, man? He whispered. You look like you've seen a ghost. We grabbed lunch at the cafeteria, and I confided in him. Harold had been through a nasty divorce himself a few years back. He hated cheaters with a passion that bordered on obsessive, which made him the perfect person to talk to right now. I showed him a photo of one of the letters, and his eyes went wide. Holy hell. You need to check HR files if you can get access. Might be fraud involved if they're using company resources. Harold had this quirk where he always quoted old Western movies. This town ain't big enough for the both of them, he said, chomping on his stale sandwich. The cafeteria smells of burnt coffee and mystery meat wafted around us as we plotted our next move. That evening, I logged into our joint bank account online. Not hacking, just using the password we'd shared since getting married. But I noticed something weird. There was a second account linked to mine that I'd never seen before. I clicked through to the details and my blood ran cold. Withdrawals totaling $45,000 since 2020. Monthly transfers of $2,500 to something labeled Chicago Mortgage. All disguised in our records as business expenses. Our savings. The money I'd been setting aside for Theo's college fund. For our future. For the vacation to Hawaii we'd been planning. All of it funneled into their secret house while I'd been scrimping on lunches and skipping the new car I needed. I printed every statement, my hands leaving sweat marks on the papers. Amanda texted that she'd be working late again. Yeah, I bet she would be. Hell, I passed on taking Theo to Disney last year because I thought we needed to save money. Meanwhile, she was funding an entire second household. I filed the documents in a folder I hid behind my dresser, forcing myself to stay calm. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. This was financial fraud, and I needed to play this smart. But something else caught my eye as I dug deeper into the account setup. The signature authorizing the second account was supposedly mine, dated April 15, 2019. I pulled out our tax returns from that year and compared the signatures. Close, but not quite right. The loop on the J in my name was wrong, and I always crossed my T's with a slight upward slant. This signature was too careful, too practiced. April 2019. I'd been in Seattle for a work conference that week. Amanda had encouraged me to go, said it would be good for my career, and she'd handle things at home. She must have forged my signature while I was gone and set up the account then. I called my lawyer friend Elaine, keeping my voice low even though I was alone in the house. She'd handled my will and some contract reviews over the years. Sharp as a knife and twice as cutting when she wanted to be. This screams bigamy if they're still married, she said after I laid out the basics. Let me check public records. Give me 30 minutes. 27 minutes later, my email pinged. Elaine's message was short and brutal. No divorce filing found. Marriage certificate on file from July 10, 2017, Las Vegas, Nevada. My vision blurred. They'd never gotten divorced. Amanda and Victor were still legally married when she married me, which meant our wedding in 2019 was illegal. I wasn't even legally her husband. And Theo. God, what did that mean for Theo's legitimacy? I paced the kitchen, coffee going cold in my mug. My pet phrase slipped out, the one my grandpa had taught me. Well, ain't that a kick in the teeth? Victor's arrogant face flashed through my mind, him wearing my robe, like he owned not just my wife, but my entire life. But I couldn't just fly off the handle. I needed more evidence, needed to be absolutely sure before I blew everything up. I ordered a DNA testing kit online, overnight shipping. While I waited, I grabbed Amanda's tablet from the bedroom. She'd left it unlocked, which was sloppy for someone juggling this many secrets. Her email was still open. I scrolled through, feeling guilty for snooping but pushing past it. That's when I found the thread about our daughter Lila, born May 2020. May 2020. I counted backwards. 9 months. August 2019. Our first anniversary trip to Maine. Amanda had said she needed to visit her sick aunt in Chicago for a few days during that trip. I'd stayed in Maine alone, disappointed but understanding. She'd been with Victor. She'd conceived their daughter while I thought we were celebrating our marriage. The DNA kit arrived the next afternoon. I swabbed Theo's cheek while he slept, feeling like the worst father in the world for doubting him. But I had to know. Then I spotted a hairbrush in Amanda's drawer with a name tag. Lila. Opportunity knocked, and I grabbed it. I sealed the samples and sent them to the lab with rush processing fees that made my wallet ache. Results would come in a week. Those 7 days crawled by like months. I played the dutiful husband while gathering more evidence. At dinner one night, I casually mentioned hearing about a good pediatrician in Chicago. Amanda's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Oh? Why Chicago? Just heard some colleagues talking about it. Their kid sees someone great there. She relaxed slightly. Actually, Lila has a doctor's appointment on the 22nd. In Chicago. My heart hammered, but I kept my face neutral. Lila? Who's Lila? Her face went white. I meant a coworker's daughter. I'm helping her schedule appointments. Right, sure she was. On the 22nd, I called in sick to work and drove to Chicago again. I'd gotten the pediatrician's address from Amanda's calendar app. Sitting in my rental car across from the clinic, I watched Victor arrive with both kids, Lila, and the boy I now knew was named Ben. They looked happy, like a real family waiting for a routine checkup. Lila swung between Victor's hands, giggling. She looked so much like Theo it hurt to breathe. I took photos of everything. Victor loading them into his car. The three of them walking into the clinic. Evidence stacking higher and higher. Back home, Harold texted, "Company picnic next week. You going?" I hadn't planned on it, but maybe I should. Keep up appearances. Plus, Victor would be there, playing the family man. The DNA results came back 2 days before the picnic. I opened the email with shaking hands. Theo was definitely mine. Thank God for small mercies. But Lila's results made my head spin. The test showed she was a half-sibling to Theo, which meant, what? That Amanda had been with both of us? The timeline suggested she'd conceived Lila during our anniversary trip. But had she been with Victor exclusively that week, or had there been overlap? I called Elaine again. This strengthens your custody case for Theo, she said. Bigamy voids a lot of her claims, but you need to file soon. The company picnic was on July 4th at a park near downtown Boston. Red, white, and blue balloons everywhere. Kids running through sprinklers, the smell of hot dogs burning on grills. I grabbed a soda and wandered around, keeping my distance from Amanda and Victor. They stood near the HR tent, looking cozy. Too cozy for a boss and employee at a work function. I ducked behind a tent to grab some napkins and overheard them talking. We need to siphon another $10,000 before he notices, Amanda said, her voice low but urgent. Buy us time for the move to Chicago, full-time. You deserve better than that boring sap anyway, Victor replied. Boring sap. That's what I was to them. The reliable idiot funding their real life. I pulled out my phone and noted the date, the conversation, everything. Elaine had told me to document everything, and I was becoming a professional at it. That night, I checked the bank logs again and found a wire transfer to a divorce attorney's office. $2,500 sent yesterday. They were preparing to divorce me before I could divorce Amanda, not if I moved faster. The next morning, July 5th, I met Elaine at her office. We drafted divorce papers citing bigamy and fraud. She filed them that afternoon, and by evening, our joint accounts were frozen pending investigation. Amanda called me crying around 8 that night. What did you do? Why are our accounts frozen? I played dumb. What? I don't know anything about that. Maybe it's a bank error? This isn't funny. I have bills to pay. I bet she did. Like the mortgage on her secret Chicago house. 2 days later, Harold pulled me aside at work. You hear about Victor? HR's investigating him for personal use of company resources. Apparently, someone tipped them off about irregular expense reports. I hadn't reported Victor, but someone had. Maybe karma was real after all. Victor left me a voicemail that evening, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Amanda pushed me into this whole thing. Said she needed financial security, that you weren't enough. None of this was my idea. Sure, buddy. Blame the woman. Classic move. The court date was set for June 15th, 2025, but Amanda showed up at our house 3 days before with suitcases, mascara running down her face. Please, she begged. Let me explain everything. It's not what you think. Then what is it, Amanda? She collapsed onto the couch. Lila might be yours. I wasn't sure whose she was when she was born. The timing overlapped. The DNA results sat in my email, already confirming that truth. But I wanted to hear her say it, wanted to watch her squirm. How could you not know who the father of your child was? Victor and I were having problems. You were so stable, so kind. I thought maybe if I had your baby, I could make a clean break from him. But then he pulled me back, said he'd changed, that he wanted our family whole again. So you kept us both, she nodded, tears streaming. I know it's wrong. I know I'm a horrible person. But I was scared. Scared of losing Victor, scared of losing you, scared of being alone. Her voice cracked, and for a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Victor called me, I said. Wants to meet tomorrow. Says he can prove you're lying to save yourself. Her face went pale. Don't believe him, please. But I was meeting him whether she liked it or not. Victor suggested a diner in South Boston, one of those greasy places with sticky tables and burnt coffee. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. Lila's mine, he said, sliding fake DNA results across the table. But I had the real ones, and these were obvious forgeries. Try again, I said. He crumbled. Fine. Look, I embezzled company funds to protect our family. Amanda needed help with the Chicago house, and my salary wasn't enough. She's the one who suggested hiding money in your accounts, said you'd never notice. I had my phone recording in my jacket pocket. Every word documented. You were just a placeholder, he continued. A way to keep things stable while we figured out our situation. Amanda never really loved you. I stood up, dropping cash on the table for my untouched coffee. Good luck with that defense in court. His eyes widened. You recorded this? I walked out without answering. That recording went straight to Elaine, and she forwarded it to the police. Fraud charges would be pending soon. Back home, Theo met me at the door. Why's Mommy so sad all the time now? How do you explain adult betrayal to a 4-year-old? Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, buddy. But you and me, we're going to be okay. That night, Amanda vanished. Her car was gone, and she'd left a note. Need space to think. Panic hit me hard. What if she'd taken the kids? I tracked her phone to the Chicago house and called the police. With the bigamy warrant already filed, they moved fast. Harold drove with me to Chicago. We arrived to find chaos. Victor's car was packed with boxes, and through the window I could see them arguing in the living room. I burst through the unlocked door, Harold right behind me. This ends now. On the kitchen counter sat a stack of forged birth certificates, dated March 2025, switching Lila's paternity from me to Victor. More fraud to add to the pile. Victor lunged at me, but Harold, who'd played college football, grabbed him in a bear hug. Easy there, champ. Amanda wept in the corner. I did it for stability. For the kids. They deserve better than bouncing between parents. You mean you wanted to have your cake and eat it too? I shot back. The police arrived minutes later. They arrested both of them for forgery and fraud. As they were led out in handcuffs, I grabbed the forged documents for evidence. The trial moved fast. I testified about the timeline, showed the bank statements, the DNA results, everything. Elaine was ruthless in her questioning, exposing every lie Amanda and Victor had built. The judge awarded me interim custody of both Theo and Lila while things got sorted. Then, right in the middle of the hearing, Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his face went gray. The judge demanded to know what was so important. Victor's lawyer requested a sidebar, but the judge insisted on reading the email aloud. It was from his company's HR department. Termination effective immediately for fraud and embezzlement. Company funds totaling $20,000 misappropriated through employee Amanda's access codes. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Victor tried to justify it, saying the money was for his kids, that he'd meant to pay it back. But the damage was done. The judge unfroze my accounts and awarded them back to me entirely. The Chicago house would be sold, proceeds split to pay restitution. As we filed out of the courtroom, Amanda grabbed my arm. There's one more thing you should know, she whispered. The trust fund in Ben's name. $15,000. It came from your savings too. Of course it did. Elaine filed to recover that money too, and within weeks, we'd won it back. Turned out Ben was Victor's biological son from before Amanda, but they'd used my money to set up his future anyway. The months that followed were strange. Amanda's friends started ghosting her. The book club she'd loved suddenly had scheduling conflicts whenever she called. Even the grocery store cashiers gave her looks. Meanwhile, I got a promotion at work. The house felt lighter without her constant presence, her lies hanging in the air. Theo and I started building new routines. Pizza Fridays, Sunday morning pancakes, bedtime stories that didn't get interrupted by her work calls. On June 15th, the final custody hearing brought closure. Amanda pleaded guilty to bigamy and fraud. She got probation and had to pay restitution. Victor received 6 months in county jail for embezzlement. Amanda lost partial parental rights. She could see the kids supervised, but they'd live with me. Harold and some other friends took me out for drinks that night. We toasted to new beginnings, to truth winning out, to justice served cold. Victor's karmic payback continued. He lost his gym membership, his social media following, his reputation. Former clients sued him for other shady dealings that came to light during the investigation. At home that night, as I tucked Theo and Lila into their beds, Lila tugged my hand. "Daddy?" That one word cracked something open in my chest. "Yeah, sweetie? Are you going to leave too?" "Never," I promised. "I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere." Healing started slowly. We burned the old letters from the attic, had a little ceremony in the backyard. I forgave Amanda in my heart, not for her sake but for mine. Carrying that anger around was like drinking poison and expecting her to get sick. But forgiveness didn't mean letting her back in. I set firm boundaries. The kids needed stability, real stability this time. Life's like coffee, I realized one morning while making breakfast. Bitter until you add your own sugar, your own cream, your own choices to make it worthwhile. A year later, in January 2026, Amanda knocked on the door. She looked different, sober, clear-eyed, thinner. "Working a retail job now," she said. "Going to therapy twice a week." "Can we talk?" she asked. I let her in, but kept the conversation in the living room where the kids couldn't hear from upstairs. She'd lost everything, she told me. The job, the friends, the second life she'd built. Victor wanted nothing to do with her anymore. "I'm not asking to get back together," she said quickly. "I know I destroyed that. But for the kids, can we figure out a co-parenting arrangement? Something stable?" I thought about it for a long minute. Supervised visits. Therapy for you continues. And the first time you slip up, we're done. She agreed. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was just two adults trying to do right by their kids after everything had fallen apart. As she stood to leave, she handed me an envelope. One last truth. I wrote it all down. Everything I should have told you from the beginning. I took it, but didn't open it while she was there. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table and read her confession. Pages detailing how Victor had been controlling. How she'd resented him but felt trapped. How meeting me had seemed like an escape, but she'd been too greedy to fully leave Victor's money behind. She owned her choices, finally. Admitted the manipulation, the lies, the selfishness. I shredded the letter and threw it in the recycling. Some truths didn't need to be kept. Some stories were better left in the past. Theo came downstairs, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Was that Mommy?" "Yeah, buddy." "Is she coming back to live here?" "No. But you'll still see her sometimes." He seemed okay with that. More resilient than I'd given him credit for. Kids adapt better than adults sometimes. I'd learned something through all this mess. Know your worth. Walk away from people who don't value it. And thrive not because of them, but despite them. I wasn't the underdog anymore. Wasn't the placeholder husband, funding someone else's dream. I was just me, raising my kids, building a real life on honest foundations. Sometimes I wonder what other secrets hide in quiet homes across America. How many people are living double lives, juggling families and lies? But that's not my problem anymore. My problem is making sure Theo gets to his soccer practice on time and that Lila's princess phase doesn't bankrupt me with costume purchases. Normal problems. Good problems. The kind that don't involve secret houses and forged documents. And honestly, that's more than enough for me.